here?
10.
I like you.
You know,
Emotional.
people, when I ask somebody how old they are, they lose it. How can you ask something like that? I tell everybody I'm very proud.
Are you single?
How old are you?
Am I single? Yes, I'm single. Sure, absolutely. But don't tell anybody, right? I won't hold it against you. Anyway, I know this crazy lady back here from the gym. I work out 3 times a week and she thinks I'm nuts.
And you're in terrible shape.
Okay.
Terrible.
What can I tell you?
Tell them a little bit about your history, where you come from, and how you came to this
I'll make
country.
it short because it's a very long history. I was born in Germany. I was born in Cologne in 1923, so I'm not lying. And as you most probably all know, in 1933 Hitler came to power, and I am Jewish. And things got a little unpleasant, to say the least. My father was a doctor and practiced medicine, of course. And my mother was a housefrau, and we were in pretty good financial condition. So, but by 1936, everything sort of was taken away from us. My father could no longer practice unless he was supervised by some German doctor. I did have an older brother, and he was sent out of the country as soon as possible, but unfortunately, well, look who's here. He unfortunately went to Holland and did not survive the war. The Germans got hold of him. So I was sent out August 31st, 1939, and I don't know how many of you remember, but war broke out on September 3rd, 1939, and I was sent out with what was called a Kindertransport, which is children's transport, out of Germany and sent to England. And then I arrived in England. I was 16 years old at the time, and if you want to ask me how I survived, I do not know. I really don't. I don't even remember some of the things that happened. But I did. I went to work, and I got on. I went back to school, and my parents were still in Germany, and I did not hear anything until 1941, when through an agency in London, they were able to find me, and they had arrived in America.
Oh my God.
And my father at that point went back to medical school. First he had to go through classes to learn English, language exam, then he went back to school with the 24-year-olds and had an internship at a hospital, and then eventually he opened up a practice in New York. I was in London during the war, and I could not get out of England because my parents couldn't get a visa for me unless I had transportation to come to America. And during the war, you know, you couldn't get that. Also, there were no planes, and the ships that did go across, you could possibly get a passage by 1943, but only if you had a visa. You couldn't get a visa unless you had a passage. So try and figure that out. Typical government. Right. Well, I was very, very fortunate. I was introduced to a gentleman who was at that time the president of Pan American Airways England. No, the gentleman I was introduced to was the gentleman that was with the General MacArthur at Iwo Jima when they put up the flag. He was a friend of my boss. And he was a friend of the president of Pan American Airways in London. And through him, I got a letter signed by the president of Pan American saying that upon receipt of my visa, I had a passage reserved on the first clipper going to America, which of course was not to be. I mean, I knew I could never use the letter. But with that letter, my parents got a visa, and once I got a visa, I got a passage on a 6,000-ton banana boat that was coming. And for 21 days, I was down in my berth, seasick from morning to night, together with a lot of war brides, believe it or not. It was a good thing because I'd gotten very fat in England.
Fish and chips.
So that was the beginning of my losing weight.
Too many fish and chips, right?
No. Actually, all of us got pretty sick because we didn't get anything to eat to speak of. I mean, our diet was powdered milk, powdered eggs, white bread, no fruit, no vegetables. I mean, you have no idea what we ate during the war years in England.
I do. My mother was there.
Right.
So I do.
You ate not to be hungry. You didn't worry what you looked like. I couldn't wear a sweater because I was like this. I had a brown linen shirt that was very big, and I remember it. I wore it practically every day over everything else. Anyway, I got to America, I got a job, and one thing led to another. I finally ended up at R.H. Macy's, and I went on their executive training squad, and from there I became a buyer, and after 4 years at Macy's, I moved over to Abraham and Strauss in New York, and in Brooklyn rather. And I was a buyer there, and in 1957, I decided I had enough of all of that, and I quit, and a friend of mine and myself went to Europe for vacation. And while I was there, I went back to Germany specifically to take care of some of my parents' affairs over there. And on a weekend in Wiesbaden, which was Air Force headquarters, U.S. Air Force headquarters, I was introduced to a gentleman in a hotel who needed an interpreter. And we spent the day together. And when he found out what I was doing, he said, well, why don't you stay here? They'll give you a job tomorrow. The big PXs, the European PXs were in Wiesbaden. They still are. And jokingly, I said, go ahead. I didn't mean it. Well, the next day I had a job. And I stayed in Wiesbaden working for the airport for 9 months. But then I decided that was enough of that, and I came back to America. And in 1967, I changed professions. From being a buyer in a department store, I went into Wall Street. Yeah. I didn't have to worry about sizes and colors. There was only one color, that was green. And I became a stockbroker in 1966. And I have the distinction of being one of the very first women stockbrokers at that time. I pursued that job, profession, whatever, occupation, until just 1 year ago at age 88.
Wow.
I retired. Now I'm retired.
And she is a model. Look at this in every way.
I want to introduce you to Joy, to Roy. Come here. When he was 19 years old.